Well, Zach, I feel like we've hit the big time today, man, because we are joined by a real life Calix executive.
I love that you addressed me directly, Gabe, as if I was the only one on this call. But welcome, John. Welcome to Buffering.
Oh, great to be here. And I'm not sure that's the right introduction, but thrilled to be part of it. Long time
Well,
listener, first time participant.
I know we're so well. Look, I'm not trying to just like blow smoke and make you feel good because you're a guest here, but we do. Zach and I genuinely appreciate everything that you have done to support our efforts here with buffering, and we couldn't be happier to have you on. John is our chief customer officer. For those who may not know him, we'll get into some of the fun details of what his day to day activities look like and some of his history and all that here in just a couple of moments, but. Again, John, we really appreciate you being here and just appreciate all the support that you've given to us on this project. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Well, it just is kind of an introduction. I wanted to get your perspective, actually going back a little bit in your work history, and you've had kind of you've had a very interesting career. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about your career is that you've actually had kind of long chunks of time at particular companies, and that's a bit atypical, I think, for a lot of folks. I've been at Calix for a long time. I'll be here 20 years this year, which always seems insane to say, but that's very weird, right? Like people don't usually do that anymore. You spent a long time at Accenture to start your career and kind of in that consulting world. I'd love to hear your perspective and your thoughts around, how that life kind of impacted your career, especially early on when you were kind of first coming out of college. I would just love to hear that perspective.
Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking about, how did I end up at Accenture, right? I was in college and, companies are coming on campus for interviews. And what appealed to me of that particular job is I'm somebody that needs new challenges, needs variety, wants to see a lot of different things. I couldn't imagine going to the same job in the same place forever, which is kind of funny because I ended up at these jobs or in these companies for a long time, but it was the
Right.
variety that really spoke to me. And so I think it was a little bit of dumb luck because it was a great place to start a career. Because in a consulting business, what's their asset? They're not making a product per se. Their value is in their human capital.
Yep.
And so what do? They invest a tremendous amount in their human capital so that it becomes more and more valuable. So, the Accenture was amazing because you enter into their onboarding cycle and then they train you like crazy. They train you not just like on technology, but they train you how to be a consultant, how to think, how to act. The really interesting thing is if you ask anybody who has been with Accenture, who is in your start group, right? Everybody will remember that. I still have my picture of my start group because
That's
it's
awesome.
such a formative way of being introduced to the company. And you go to their training center. It used to be in St. Charles, and you go and you have this St. Charles immersion experience, where you walk out of there way better prepared to go out and meet with customers and present yourself in a professional way. And so I think that idea that in a consulting organization, their investment is so critical in the people. It was a massive benefit. Now that was dumb luck. I didn't know that. Nobody said, "Hey, this is the best place to onboard is where somebody's really going to invest in you heavily."
Well, and I wanted to talk about it because I've seen a similar thing with folks that I've run across in my career. I had a lot of friends who went to work for like Ernst and Young, or my wife actually worked for Arthur Anderson for a little while back when that was a thing, and saw this sort of firsthand around how they make those investments. I told you previously too. I worked for a company that was owned by General Electric for a little while, and they very similar program, right, where they identify talent. They move them around the
Mm-hmm.
organization. So you're never getting bored. Every 2 years, you're moving to a new place. And I feel like Zach needs to do that job for, like a few years just to like move around to all these different
Well,
places.
hey, Gabe, I was just going to say, you guys are talking about your career paths. I think, combined, Gabe and I have always said we've got 20 plus years in the broadband space. So that's the metric I always go off of. I'm still a little new to this, but 3 years on and counting now.
Well, and I do part of the reason I want to talk about this, John, is, we have a wide mix of people that listen to the show and watch the show, and there are people who are early on in their career, and I think there is a lot of validity to what you said around, that opportunity to think differently, to be able to kind of be forced to, have a strong opinion around things and get that proper training, because you're spot on. In the consulting world, the asset is the capital, right? It's the human capital of, the value that you're bringing to that conversation.
Right. And so many great lessons. I think one of the things that I learned there is how to ask questions.
Mm.
You know, everybody thinks a consultant tells people what to do. Maybe more likely you ask a lot of questions and you're helping the customer get to the same conclusion that you've reached, but they do it in their own mind and then they own it. Right.
For sure.
And I was thinking about this. It's like, I should have used more of my consulting experience with my own children because they never responded well to being told what to do. I should have said, gosh, I should have just acted like a consultant, and they would have probably got there faster and better and more embracing it. Just, that's a success. If you can do it and meet somebody in a way that they say, oh yeah, that is the right thing. And they feel like it was their idea. That's a home run.
Just to take a little bit of a left turn here, we didn't even have this in the outline, but influence, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that we as people have, right? And especially working in a corporate environment, you're at a much different level of the organization than Zack and I, so you can influence in different ways. But if you want people to buy in, you still need to get them excited about what it is that you're doing. I have to influence in a very different way. I don't have direct reports. I don't have people that are reporting to me. So when I'm building consensus across the organization and trying to influence the direction, I have to do it in a very different way. And what you said there was so smart about the, making it appear like it's their idea by asking the questions and having them get to that conclusion on their own.
I mean, that was like one of the fundamental lessons that I learned at Accenture, right? Is like, you never walk into a meeting without knowing how everybody thinks about the topic you're going to cover. You've done all your homework. You've met with everybody, all the positions, and you're orchestrating the outcome that you're looking for because you know all the variables. And you put a lot of effort into that. And that's like, I still do that today. You would think, you're the chief of customer officer, you can get people to do what you want them to do. No, people still need to be convinced. They still need to be bought in. And frankly, a lot of times by taking this approach, you actually get a better outcome.
For sure.
Right? I can say, do this, and it may be okay. I can think of so many times I've taken it to somebody and said, well, what do you think about this idea? And they were like, that's a good idea. Have you thought about this? I'm like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. That's wonderful. And then you're co-creating an outcome with them. And then when you co-create, everybody wants to be part of creating something, and they put their spin on it. They're bought in.
For sure. Well, and I just feel like I'm like totally sucking up to you this entire time, but I swear this, I'm not trying to do that. But one of the things that I've noticed with you since you joined here and the conversations that we've all had together is that what you just said is a very humble approach to leadership. Knowing that you don't necessarily have all of the answers, and actually truly being willing to listen to other people who, again, Zack and I are at very different levels of the organization than you, but I always feel like you genuinely listen to the things that we bring. I've certainly worked for executives and bosses that have not had that in the past, right? And have not approached it in that way. I think we probably all have. But I do really appreciate the humility in that approach to understand that, there's going to be smart people in the organization that, hopefully you can lean on and learn from regardless of what level you're at.
Yeah, maybe I'm comfortable. I know I'm not that smart.
I don't think that's true. But well, Zack, I to kind of bring it back to topic today, one of the things that that the three of us talk about all of the time is customer experience stuff. Zack, I'd love for you to maybe just spend a couple of minutes talking about how we want to introduce this topic today and get into the actual customer experience discussion that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, Gabe, let's do it. I think like you said, we're constantly talking about customer experience, and just before this podcast, I was talking to Gabe and I thought, what's a bad customer experience? Like, we're going to talk a lot about good customer experiences today, but should we focus more on bad customer experiences? And I feel like, Gabe, we just save that for another episode. Keep
We
people
could do
coming
like
back.
an hour just on that.
I know, but that's
they should comment. Tell us all of your bad customer experience.
Exactly.
True, yeah.
And the examples I was giving Gabe was, one of the big things I try not to do is immediately associate customer experience with customer service. I think that's not quite the same thing. So we need to keep that in mind. But I was telling Gabe, I think the biggest one for me right now, from a customer experience point of view, that I just can't stand. And Gabe, this is nothing new to our podcast listeners, but the lack of personalization. Whether it's the ads I'm targeted with, or whatever that may be. I hate to bring up Crumble so early on this podcast, but Gabe, do you remember my recap when it was that personalized review of everything I bought that year, like my favorites based on my buying, decisions, things like that? That's a great customer experience, as opposed to, hey, we think you should, hot take, go out, buy this mint chocolate chip cookie that we know you hate. That's not personalized. It's just a terrible experience. But again, I want to focus on some good customer experience examples today. And one of the examples here I had was, I think, something we're all familiar with. And I want to look at it from a few different angles. And it's going to be focused on Apple. And in this case, Apple does a lot more than sell a product. They're focused on enriching our lives, selling that experience. And there's a few ways they do that. Number one, Apple Pay. I went to the grocery store last night to get some milk. I was in and out. I paid with my watch. That always amazes people too, when you roll up and pay with your watch and get out of there. I mean, it's just such a seamless experience. If you're on the web too, buy with Apple Pay. John, before this podcast, you had that sign in with Apple button. That's way easier than going in and creating an account. So again, it's this experience that they've created that enriches our lives. Now, let's look at it from the development point of view as well. And I'm going to use United and again, Crumble as the example here. But a few years ago, they introduced live activities into the iPhone. These are notifications that kind of live on your home screen. If you have that dynamic island, the data lives there as well. But when I was flying to Las Vegas for connections, I was in the United Club, and I got my notification that said, hey, your flight's ready to go. You're in seat 20A or whatever seat it was. And then it told me it's a 5-minute walk to your gate when your group is boarded. So I didn't have to wait around the gate or crowd, around other people as we all try to get on the plane first. And then when I got there, I scanned my ticket, and then it changes to the seat, tells me what seat I'm in. So I don't have to keep looking at my phone or anything like that. But that whole experience from, really check into the United Club to the gate to on the plane was just seamless. And again, what Apple did is they created this platform that companies like United are building on top of. And the Crumble example, same thing. You buy your cookies on the app, and when you roll up, it's geo-fenced, so they know when you're there. You check in, and they've got a fresh hot box of cookies ready for you to go. And then when you leave, I thought it was funny too. By the time I got home, I had a notification on my phone that said, hey, how was it? Did you dig in? Rate the cookie kind of thing. And it's just a seamless customer experience there.
Well, seamless and end to end, right?
Exactly.
All the way through that kind of, all the way through the, not only the purchase, but the actual enjoyment of the product too.
Exactly. Because at any point in this journey, they could have just sent me my welcome notification, like, hey, welcome to the airport, goodbye kind of thing. That could have been the end of that interaction, but it continued all the way until my flight landed in Vegas, and it told me what baggage claim to go to. And it's this whole experience, Gabe. I hate to be like, what was it like flying 20 years ago? But we were talking, I told you, I don't think I would have survived well in the early 1900s, because
there's a lot more paper, I can tell you that,
yeah.
man. Having to John, you remember these days, having to walk around with your boarding pass and a piece of paper, and then you get off the plane and you be hailing a taxi cab. Now I pride myself on not having to bring my wallet most places and just being able to do everything through my phone.
High risk.
Yeah.
It's funny when you said that, Zach. I thought of it back when I was in consulting, and I flew in somewhere, and I left the plane, and I got in the cab to the hotel, and I realized I left my return ticket in the seat back pocket.
Ooh,
okay.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. And Zach, you don't know this, but in that day and age, that was like leaving $100 bill there. You were never going to get it back, ever. And they wouldn't let you on the plane without it. and you couldn't get a new one without purchasing an entire new ticket.
Yeah, I would have been walking home, I think.
But
But
That's hilarious.
like it was crazy, right? And you think today, you just, it's on your phone. By the way, I always get concerned about this. Same thing is like, download your boarding pass. And you're like, well, how many will they let me have? Because like I'm so still in the old mindset of like, can I have one like on my phone, and can I have my wife's, and can she have her own? Like, yes, the answer is yes to all those. In the old days, it would be answered no. There can only be one.
well, this is an interesting thing. So this is one thing I've never been able to bring myself to do. But have you ever put your flight ticket on I use an Apple Watch, but have you ever put it on your watch?
I haven't tried it on my watch.
I haven't tried that yet either. You can do it, and you can scan your wrist, but I'm just afraid that I'm not going to get like the positioning right, or like it's not going to pick it up, and then I'm just going to look like a total fool in front of this line trying to scan my watch. Hilarious. But hey, maybe if it works, I mean, again, a great customer experience. Maybe someday we won't even be scanning tickets to get on these flights. We'll just be walking in and having that. So again, the big thing there was Apple built a platform that developers and these other companies could come on and create these customer experiences. Crumble, United, there's other companies that you do these things too. I see, Gabe, we talked a lot about health apps in the past week and how like the medical information can sync from your provider to your phone automatically.
I totally did that yesterday, by the way. So I linked
and
my
thumbs up, thumbs down. How was it?
It was super easy. And now I'm like, cool. Now my doctor actually has all of this information that's kicking off of my Apple Watch, which seems a little weird and maybe a bit scary, but it's at the same time, it's like, actually, no, I'm making the experience better because I'm providing them with insight and information to personalize my care.
And the example I gave you too was, by the time, my doctor had left and like the nurse was scheduling and coming back to, just get me out the door and finalize everything. All that information already synced to my phone. I knew when my next appointment would be. I knew all of this before they even came to talk to me. So again, Apple's created platform that we're building on top of, and I think any brand that leverages this and takes advantage of it is doing the right thing. I think of like the home key too. I don't know if you've seen that, but like unlocking your house, your deadbolt with Face ID.
I want to. That is 100% the next product that I want to buy is the smart lock for my door, so I can just walk up and just roll right in. Because when you're like, I got the kids, I got other stuff, like it's a freaking nightmare, and I just want to be able to walk up and just
so open. Why would anyone want a legacy experience when you've got these cutting edge ones that we're deploying now? So that's enough talking about Apple. Gabe, I know you've got some maybe less.
I do have one
techie.
as well. Yeah, I do have a less techie one. I did want to circle back to John though, because John, you were sharing an example with us yesterday of like really that cool end-to-end customer experience that I'd love to hear about as well. And then I'll share my like super non-techie one.
Yeah, we when you asked me to think about customers that I've worked with over the course of my career that have been really amazing experience, and it's a pretty interesting one because this company made from glass. They would recycle glass and make countertops and backsplash, which isn't really that sexy of a product, right? No. I mean, people need it in the construction process. What was amazing is they took the solutions, right? When I was at Salesforce, they took our products and they built, by the way, it's like a 10-person company, super small.
That's
right?
The craziest part to this, of this whole story.
Super small company, right? This great leader. And he thought, I want to create the most incredible customer experience. And you could he actually created the experience end to end so that any part of the experience the customer would have, they were in full control, which, is rare. It's rare for big companies to do this. It's even rare for small companies. So the website, they could go to the website and have this real high fidelity experience around the products. They wanted to buy the product. They could buy the product, put the amount that you need in, right? Oh, by the way, you need help ensuring you measure properly, or, we want to give you a little bit more information about what kind of bevel you might want on it, et cetera, right? The colors. So there was agent assistant in there through a chat agent. So you make the purchase, right? Great. They didn't stop there. Now you got, just like you would in some of the other world-class, here's your, product ID or, your ID of what you bought, and track it through the manufacturing process and where it is in the manufacturing process, and then where it is in the delivery process. You could see the entire thing end to end. And that's like, that's rare, right? But when we have that
Totally.
experience, it's amazing, right? We were talking about the shopping experience when we go online and we go to buy something and you say, well, I don't even want to wait. I'll go pick it up at the store, and you check to see, can I see whether the store has an inventory? And Zach, you said if you go and you can't, you just abandon that whole
Oh yeah,
shelf.
and this is like real life example of like a month ago, when I was looking for things to furnish an apartment. If you couldn't tell me if it was in stock or not, I was off to the next store. I don't waste my time.
Right. I mean, which is incredible.
Well, and what I loved about that example, John, is that it's an industry that typically has really shied away from that type of, normally anything for your house, it's like, oh crap, I got to carve out half a day because the person's going to come over and they're going to do all this stuff. And then I'm going to have to, write it on a carbon copy paper and sign real hard 3 times to make sure that it's all right. What you just talked about was a very modern, way to purchase and that end-to-end customer experience. That's what people want. And if you're making it easier for them to buy, you're going to sell more stuff. I just loved that story, and especially that it was such a small organization that was able to put that end-to-end customer experience together to really think about, that all of those touch points throughout the process.
And that was a decade ago. Think about
Yeah,
that. That was
there
a
you go.
decade ago. It wasn't like with, even technology makes these things easier and easier and easier.
Sure.
But that you buy more because you're like, it's easy.
Yes.
It's an easy experience. It's predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I loved that example so much. I thought it was so spot on. And again, just thinking about a very atypical type of, typical industry that would, really embrace technology like that. The example I had, which I thought was fun. So, it's, to me, customer experience, what you talked about, John, that end-to-end experience, what you talked about, Zach, the personalization piece of it, super important. What I think about too is those moments of delight, right? Where you can create these fun little moments of delight in a process that really just, create so much joy for your customer. And I was talking to a buddy over the weekend who got a Traeger barbecue, which is those nice smokers, right, for Christmas. And what he was telling me was that as he took the barbecue apart and started putting it together, took it out of the box, the inside of the box was a playhouse for his kids. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is brilliant. Like, what a clever way to create a fun experience while Pops is building the barbecue. The kids can, play in this, can color and build this playhouse, and then they have something to play with. And, you can start smoking some meat and drinking some beer and hanging out, right? But I just loved that so much. I thought it was a great idea of just, okay, where can I create those fun little moments of delight? It's really low cost, most likely, right, relatively speaking to this multi-$100 product that somebody is buying, but it creates such a unique experience. And I actually Googled like Traeger barbecue playhouse, and there are just hundreds of pictures that people have posted on social of their kids playing with this box that their barbecue came in. It's such brilliant marketing.
So are you going to buy one now, Gabe? How's this?
I mean,
work
honestly,
now?
I really want one. My neighbor who lives just right next door to me here, he actually has one, and so I kind of have the best of both worlds. Where he's a great neighbor and a great guy. It's actually a different neighbor, Zach, than the other guy who I was.
What kind of neighborhood are you living in?
I live in a
I was
wonderful
thinking it was the
neighborhood.
same person.
No, it's not. It's a different guy. So no, I have wonderful neighbors. I have no complaints. But during the pandemic, especially, my neighbor Bobby would be smoking meat all the time and would constantly just be dropping off meat on my front porch, which. Yeah, he's a good dude. So.
That's what my neighbors do. It's bad. Like in the summertime, we'll be mowing and you catch like the wind blowing like brisket downhill. It's man, it's tough. You've got to get one though, Gabe. I want to see some pictures of this playhouse.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. I during the summer often I have my window open, and so he'll be out in the backyard smoking meat in the afternoon, and the smoke will just blow over, and I'm just sitting here smelling delicious smoked meats. So thankfully, he's always nice and shares.
You know what I love about that story, Gabe? That maybe you're going to talk about it, but thinking about someone took the time to think about that unboxing experience from a broader perspective. Like it wasn't just because a lot of times we're saying, well, we sent in a box and we put it in, we packaged it so it was super easy. You pulled it out, it was easy to follow the directions. Great, but someone said, let's go one step further. Who's around in this experience? And I think that is amazing because that means that they're really challenging the people in their organization to think about the experience that the person's having,
Totally.
but who else could be involved in that experience that could be wowed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, to bring this to a broadband service provider example really quick, since obviously that's, the space that we operate in. The one that I always think of, and it seems very simple. Okay, you're a technician. You're walking into a customer's home. You're going to be there for an hour or maybe two, right? And there's kids running around. Why would I not have coloring books or, just something simple to give to the kids that are running around in that home? It's a great way to, have something. You could even have it branded, right? My dream is for a BSP to actually write a children's book. I think that would be hilarious, and hand that over to the, if there's kids in the home as well. I think that would be brilliant. But these aren't wildly costly things,
Yeah.
and I know some BSPs have done this. I think it's a great idea, but you're creating that little fun moment, those fun moments of delight with your customer around the overall experience that's already happening.
It's a digital book that they get
there you
sent
go.
to their iPad.
Oh, there we go. A little,
Right?
Yeah, that's even better. I like that. Yeah, in tying it into the technology angle, even better. Well, Zach and I, we talk about customer experience a lot, and John, I know this is something you're really passionate about as well. I know there's some things that we're doing at Calix to, partner with our customers around customer experience. And you had actually sent me some of the resources that we're getting ready to roll out around this. One of the things that really jumped out to me when I was looking at that was this quote that was in the materials you sent. If you're aspiring to satisfy your customers, you're aspiring to mediocrity. And God, that just hit me over the head like a ton of bricks. I loved that quote so much.
And we'll attribute it. It's John Pico.
Yeah.
Right. Who we had on our mini main stage at our user conference to talk about that. And I think it's spot on. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. It's like, if you're just looking for satisfaction, then that is mediocre. That is a mediocre experience for the customer versus what, some of this other stuff we were talking about before, like with the Traeger, or, with, trying to figure out these different touch points so that people can really understand. The other thing that you said that was really interesting was rethinking listening, and not necessarily even listening to what your customers are saying, but watching what they're doing. And that's another one that really kind of hit me over the head of like, okay, what is that? What are the problems that the customer is actually looking to solve? And how can I, as the business, start to insert myself into that? I suspect that company who made the recycled backsplashes and countertops probably realized, hey, my customers are really frustrated with this experience of, purchase, of how the purchase process works currently. Right. How can I completely flip that and do it different?
Right. Yeah. And I think our customers have a huge opportunity because I'm sure on the other end of that connection, they're cobbling a bunch of things together to create an experience that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And our customers have insight into that.
Yep.
Right. I think you guys talked about it in the other episode, is how many game consoles are connected. Right. And, just thinking about that aspect of using the data to personalize the experience or to come up with a new solution that they may just make it easier to pull it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think this is where, BSPs have a very unique view, because you're right. They do have a lot of data coming back, which is great, but they also have a lot of opportunity to have those personal interactions with their customers that I think is a really unique thing that broadband service providers have that just a lot of businesses don't have. They can watch and observe what's happening. Like, right. Zach, you just had I know you've had a, somewhat recent install with your move, right? Like, there's somebody hanging out in your house for a couple hours watching how you're interacting with your technology.
Well, I mean, you walk into my house and I feel like the second you step in, you know exactly what kind of the Wi-Fi lights, my dad always talks about the TV I have, how it takes up a whole wall of the apartment, but it's not, it's but you walk in and that technician, he was here for 10 minutes. It was, ONT was installed and all he had to do was plug in some equipment and go, but it would have been an easy opportunity to upsell into, seeing Gabe, I've talked about this with Wendy from SE Telecom, my tech focused life, what that lifestyle looks like for the individual subscriber. You're in their home, you're talking to them. It's a great opportunity for that personalization that we talked about.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and One of the things that we've talked about a lot too, as it relates to customer experience, is, and this is something, John, you hit on as well with that previous story, it touches the entire journey. I think oftentimes businesses look at, well, how can I improve the customer experience around a specific purchase decision? And while that's important, like we definitely want ease of purchase, that can't be the end all be all, right? Like we need to be thinking about what this looks like across the entire journey. Zach, you had a really interesting experience with DoorDash, and FedEx. Can you tell that story? I thought that was such a fascinating one.
Yeah, I'm hoping this wasn't the one where I got food poisoning, but no, it's no this. So when it's 28 below, you've got a DoorDash sometimes. Perks of living in the mountains instead of on the beach in California like Gabe. But when you go on the app and buy something, you're having someone come to your home. So DoorDash is sending someone to your home to bring you your food or whatever you just bought. Now, knowing that someone is coming to your home, they're going to be there anyway. One of the prompts I have in the DoorDash app was, hey, do you have a FedEx package that we can pick up and take away for $1? And Gabe, I told you yesterday, I was like, just about everyone has a FedEx package laying around that you've just been waiting to drop off or waiting to take. So for them to come in and say, hey, we're going to be at this customer's house anyway, what else can we do? How can we capitalize on this opportunity? Mm-hmm. And again, I got the notification saying, hey, FedEx package, we'll take it away for $1.
Well, also, this kind of goes back to a conversation we were having about the advertising on sports podcasts for gambling stuff, and the promotions that they were running there. The Venn diagram of people who are ordering DoorDash and the Venn diagram of people who are also ordering a bunch of other stuff from places like Amazon or other places to get delivered to their house. I'm sure that's a very large overlap, right? So they're going, hey, we've got this target market of people who clearly like to have, in this case, food delivered to their house. I'll bet they're having other stuff delivered to their house too. And they probably have something that they would like to return. John, you mentioned about somebody thinking about that experience. It's like somebody at that company was like, hey, we should really, if we're going to be sending somebody to the house, what are the other things that we could do?
Right. Yeah, for that customer, what's the value driver? What would they appreciate? What work or problem can we solve for them that they would be like, this is amazing? Just like Zach's experience, right? Mm-hmm. That's phenomenal. Like you said, oh, I now I know that they have that. It's great. Now I know when I need to return this package. I'm okay with saving myself a lot of time by paying them $1.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because I'm like, oh, no, I don't have to go out and do this thing. I can use that time in a more productive way.
Well, not to mention we don't have to send Zach out in minus 28-degree weather to go deal with it too.
Yeah, man. What was up with that, Gabe? I know you always tell me, oh, you don't have to live there. But after this last weekend, I was talking to some of our customers up in Montana, and I was like, did you guys get this cold snap? And they're like, oh yeah, it came in. And it was windy, and I'm like, I don't know like what I did to deserve this. Must have been Dracula in a past life. But man, that feature in the DoorDash app, building on a problem. Gabe, you talked about your sports betting example, and I just started thinking like, okay, well, like when the latest, Xbox game comes out, what do I want to do? I want to sit down and play that game, and I don't want to be bothered, right? I still have to eat, I still have to do these other things. But I thought, man, what if, me as the BSP, I know who my gamers are. I know, their usage and my high gamers versus my Candy Crushers, right? What if I, start to think about DoorDash promotions, or how can I, promote different services through these times? And it goes back to the personalization of that experience with the data you have. I mean, there's a million directions this can go in. We might have to do a whole episode on that.
Well, and that's actually probably a good transition to kind of like wrap this up, because I'd really love to. I'd love, John, for you just to provide a little bit of your perspective. I think you have a very unique role in that you're getting to talk to broadband service providers, and specifically leaders of broadband service providers, pretty much every day, right? I think that's how you spend a good majority of your time. And so you have a really unique perspective on this. What are in the broadband provider space, where do you see the biggest opportunity to improve these touch points, to improve the customer experience? I'd love to hear your perspective on that as we kind of bring things to a close here.
Look, we know that they can provide white glove service, like tremendous. They're local. People know them. I think it's these moments of surprise, like you said, really going above and beyond, right? And I think I think you guys talked about it in one of your earlier episodes, but The Bear, you guys watched that show on Hulu,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? And you remember the maitre d', he went to that really high end restaurant, and he really leaned into what it's like to create an experience for, and he was listening to this group at a table, and they had been visiting Chicago, and they said, the only thing we didn't get to do is have a Chicago pizza. Now, and there's 5-star restaurant, and he heard this, and he ran out to a local pizza place, got that pizza, brought it back to the shop, back to the kitchen, and told the chef. And the chef took this and did something amazing, right? It wasn't something he ordered, but he didn't serve it, right? He did, he 5-starred this thing.
Sure.
And it showed one thing is, still 5-star dining experience, but they listened, and they just, they will never forget that. Mm-hmm. They will never forget that. They will be loyal customers when you really think about how do you surprise your customers? How do you take that experience to the next level? And because you're providing white glove, you have this great opportunity to listen.
Yeah. And
really see what these customers are doing, and to either extend your products, like you said, where, solving a problem that they didn't even know they have, that they would be like, how can I live without this now? Mm-hmm. That's where I think the opportunity is, right? If you're really leaning into saying we are a customer experience provider, and we're going to do way more than just provide you access, because we think there's really more that we want, more of a relationship we want to have with our customers, and more that we can do for them.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, right? I think it's very easy for people to say that they want to be the customer experience provider. It's a lot more difficult to think about what are those different things, throughout the entire experience. And one of the other points I would make there is, and you kind of touched on it, they're empowering people to make those decisions, right? In that case, the maitre d', in the fake case of the bear, right? The maitre d', the employee going out and making that decision, right? But they're empowering people that are within the organization to go out and do those things. That's where you start to really unlock some unique, creative solutions that people are going to bring to the conversation with your customer that wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise.
Right.
And Gabe, I think that's the mic drop for the week.
I think so, man. I don't know where we go from there.
All right.
That's awesome. John, again, we really appreciate you, sharing your perspective. This was a lot of fun.
Welcome to Buffering. You're officially on the guest list now. So I think John, you're the third, internal guest we've had here. We've had Kat, we've had Allison. Believe it or not, we did have Remy on at Connections. I thought she was going to be like the first guest of like the Buffering series, but I was like, oh wait, I was at Connections with her. So John, you're in the big leagues now.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Buffering. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe, John, and I on LinkedIn.